We are Rogue Media Sports.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is time for another episode of the Doomsday podcast, and a very happy episode where the Cowboys, one of the most unlikely results I can remember in all the years of covering the Cowboys. Ed Werder, who was in studio tonight here in Dallas, Frito Nation Productions. Ed, can you put this in perspective? I mean,
I can.
40-7 over Jacksonville. This is a team that was in the AFC title game a year ago.
And probably should have won.
And is pretty much top five in pretty much every defensive statistical category. And the Cowboys just lit them up. In fact, the game was pretty much over at halftime.
Well, the Cowboys have been obviously two different teams, home and on the road. They're undefeated at home. They're winless on the road, which is where they'll be next week. But you asked for some sort of context for what they accomplished, and I think this is it. I mean, the Cowboys came into the game ranked 30th in the NFL in scoring offense, ahead of only two teams, the Bills and the Cardinals, and both of them have the excuse of starting rookie quarterbacks. And this, not only this game, but this stretch of games really seemed like the most unlikely time of all for the Cowboys suddenly to develop the ability to score points on their own. They really didn't do it with the help of the defense for the most part. All four of their upcoming opponents, including Jacksonville, ranked top 10 in the NFL in fewest points allowed. Jacksonville having the highest ranking in that regard at 3. Next week's opponent, the Redskins, are 10th. The Titans the following week, the next home opponent, are 4th. And the Eagles the week after that are 6th. So they did it once. I think the challenge now is, can they sustain scoring against good defensive teams?
I'm with you. And it was a remarkable evening. And it also sheds light, Ed, on the fact that this team seems to be fairly efficient, and to be able to function at all, they really need to be at home. And so now they, and this is another nugget I came across. In fact, a member of the Cowboys organization kind of leaked this one to me. Ed, this is the first time in the history of AT&T Stadium, the new stadium out there, which is, I think, celebrating its 10th year, that the Cowboys have ever started 3-0 at home. And they have done so, and now sit at 3-3. Ed, we've got Jerry Jones audio, which I'm excited for you to hear. We've got Cole Beasley, who had a huge night, and we obviously have our That's a Stretch segment with Glenn Stretch Smith handing out the grades to every facet of the offense and defense. Ed, I think it's time to get started. Frito, please play the music. And it is that Doomsday podcast. And boy, I tell you, the numbers continue to go up. We're so happy to have you. And we're just thrilled, all the sponsors that are involved. And we will continue to do this because it has been so much fun. And the Cowboys get this thing to 3-3 with that 40-7 victory over Jacksonville. And Ed, we'll hear from Jerry Jones here in just a bit. And one of the things Jerry talks about is just, this offense, and then Dak. And then one of the things I really want to hear from him and to get your take on is just this finally getting the front four together on defense that he apparently has been dreaming of. And it happened. But, Ed, this was a game that some things that Kansas City, and obviously as we tape this, they are playing the Patriots as we speak. But Kansas City has been one of the huge stories in the NFL. And Pat Mahomes, one of the great young quarterbacks in this league. But some of the things they had success with, against Jacksonville. It seems the Cowboys did their homework this week.
Yeah, I don't in any way want to diminish what Dak Prescott and offensive coordinator, Scott Linehan accomplished against Jacksonville's defense. But as one member of the offensive coaching staff told me after the game, there was certainly a benefit to playing the Jaguars the week after they surrendered 30 points in a loss to the Chiefs. Linehan and his staff were able to break down the tape and see how offensive mastermind Andy Reid identified and exploited weaknesses in a defense that ranked third in the NFL in fewest points allowed. And, even though the Cowboys lack a dominant passer at the quarterback position, which Kansas City has, as you mentioned, and the explosive playmaking that the Chiefs have at the offensive skill positions, they really were able to expand on some of what the Chiefs accomplished. They scored 40 points, the vast majority coming before either of their two takeaways. But I think one of the interesting trends in the NFL is that it appears that Reid's expertise benefits not only the Chiefs, but whoever plays that opponent the following week. Teams like the Cowboys, who played against the Chiefs' opponent the next week, have scored 20, 27, 29, 34, and now 40 points against that team. That's an average of 30 points a game. And coming into this game, the Cowboys had averaged under 17 points a game, about just what Jacksonville and their defense had allowed. Dak's quarterback rating in this game was 107.5. The Jaguars had allowed an average of 70.6, the best mark in the league. No wonder when this night was over, Ezekiel Elliott said, "That's the most dominating performance we've had since I've been here."
Wow. It's almost like Andy Reid is sort of spearheading the entire effort of this points. We're seeing just like, think about it. The Cowboys were the only team, one of the few teams, sort of holding everybody back from this crazy explosion of points we've seen in the NFL, which is unlike anything.
Historic. And they were not participating in it. You're right. They were lowering the number.
They were holding everybody back. And then tonight they bust out for 40 points. That is good, Ed. That maybe some studies of Kansas City and what Andy Reid is doing. Of course, a huge test as we speak happening in New England.
And Reid is one of the first guys in the NFL to adapt some of these college concepts and roll them into his West Coast offensive style of play, which he learned from Mike Holmgren and came from Bill Walsh. And they have that kind of offensive mindset, and so I think it does benefit the Cowboys to see what that kind of quarterback and those kinds of players can do in the NFL with those kind of concepts. Yeah,
and one of the things that, unlike Pat Mahomes for Kansas City is a quarterback that's put up enormous numbers. When you talk about historic, he has been that way. His ability to extend plays, but just his arm talent is insane. Did I tell you that story? I think I tweeted about it where, like, when they went to test him, one group told me about the Browns went and they said, "Hey, put your feet together if you don't mind, shoulder length apart. Stand at the 20-yard line. Just see if you'll turn your hips to see how far you can throw it." And it was 68, 69, and 68 yards. To that point, the most they had ever seen was like a few years before, Matt Ryan had impressed them with 38. So this is sort of an amazing thing. Now, what the Cowboys have to do, Ed, let's talk specifically about Dak Prescott's night. Okay, they took him out. Cooper Rush got to come in, so he didn't get to go for 200 yards. But what he did is he ran for over 80 yards. And if the Cowboys had known he was closing in on Roger Staubach's single-game record of 91 yards, that was the most any Cowboys quarterback has ever run for in a game. That happened in 1971. Surely they would have let him run one more time, but he goes out there and he runs for 81 yards. He is a threat. And 82 yards, was it?
Yeah, it was 11 times for
82.
And that's the second time this season, both at home when he's established a career high for rushing yards, and not coincidentally, the Cowboys have won both the games.
Yeah,
and the first one was against the Giants.
He just seems to. And Ed, you made a point a few weeks ago. I believe it was after the win over what's turned out to be a horrific Giants team. But you made the point that this quarterback seemed to suggest that he would like to impose his will and, in fact, punish defenders. That is not a normal thing.
He likes to play a physical game.
You hear from a quarterback. Now, today he was asked about the fact, can you sustain that? Is 11 too many? Is that about right? And he said that was fine for him. But I just don't know how the Cowboys, some of these games where they've gotten on the road, and some people have tried to explain this to me. The guy who will join us here in a little bit, Stretch, has tried to explain this to me. You can't always do the zone read because teams are loading the box. It's not there. But when the Cowboys commit to it, it seems to work tremendously well. And early in this game, zone read, 17-yard touchdown for Dak.
The Cowboys, oftentimes, their personnel seems to be something of a mystery to their offensive coaching staff. Like, they don't know. They're not familiar with these types of players that they've accumulated, and they don't really know how to use them. Jason Garrett, we all know, was on those Cowboys teams in the 90s that won Super Bowls in a very traditional style of offense, and I think that's the way he really wants to play. That's kind of the way they played in 2014, Romo's last great year when they went to Green Bay. Now, they played differently in 2016, and that's the only reason I think that what they seem to do every other week, which is run the zone read and use more college concepts and let Dak Prescott get outside the pocket, throw on the move, run, not constrict him to the pocket. I think it is sustainable if they do it in the right measure. I don't often find myself in agreement with Jerry Jones on football philosophy, but I thought he said something this week that was right on the mark. And it would seem odd when you think about it, but he basically said, we need to use our quarterback more in the running game, and we need to use our running back more in the passing game. And I think that's true. Yeah. I think both of those things are true. I think the Cowboys are at their absolute best on offense when the defense has to respect Dak Prescott out of the pocket. If he's in the pocket, he's easily defensed. He's not a good enough thrower from there to win from the pocket. And they're at their very best when Zeke Elliott is a receiver set up on screens, running down the boundary as we saw him do against the Lions for that game-winning catch. So I think Jerry made a great point, and hopefully the coaches were listening to it. And I think their success will be determined by whether they can continue to come up with ideas like they had tonight. I mean, the execution was at a high level. They were creative in what they tried to do. And, not by accident, they had a great game against an overmatched defense.
It was a remarkable and just strange night to see them just blow this team away. You do see it from time to time in the NFL, sort of a result that just sort of blows you away. Ed, what I'm not going to do tonight is I'm not going to get intoxicated with this win. I'm not going to come here and go, okay, they're in the race now. They're in the playoff race. But the truth is, if they could go on the road and beat Washington, they would be right in the middle of it. They're 3-3.
Right.
The Philadelphia Eagles are 3-3. Redskins got a victory today.
They're a half game ahead behind the Redskins.
Yeah,
and I got to say, I was more impressed with the Redskins after watching their game today than I had been before. For Adrian Peterson at 33 to dislocate his shoulder last Monday night against the Saints and then come out and nearly rush for 100 yards against a team that never gives up 100 yards. We saw how good Carolina's run defense is week one when the Cowboys played them.
Yeah.
And I think for the reasons that we stated before we went to the music about the challenge that they play of all these top 10 defenses coming up, and at least one of those is on the road, and that's next week against the Redskins. But I don't think we should fail to respect what they accomplished today against a highly regarded team. I mean, a lot of people think Jacksonville is one of the three best teams in the AFC, and they handled them from the very beginning of the game.
Yeah, it was not...
Scored the first three times they had the ball.
It was not a contest. Ed, we're going to hear from Jerry, and we'll react to that. I mean, Jerry had some very interesting things to say after this, and for whatever reason, this owner is usually attracts the most attention after games, and tonight was like no other. And Ed, you always bring great perspective, and you've covered Jerry for a long time. It was like he'd seen a ghost in a good way in talking about the performance. I mean, it was one of the most dominant performances he could remember in a long time.
It's like, I think he said something like, I can't remember a more dominant performance by us. Like, you were here in 92 and 93 and 94 and 95
it's
when
been a while.
They blew out good teams with regularity.
And he just turned 76. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt on that. His memory, and by the way, this Conor McGregor thing, do not dismiss that.
The strut. Everybody was doing the strut.
Huge. The strut looked good.
Did you see Conor McGregor throw the football though?
It's a rough look. Yeah, and I heard Tony. I was at the game, but I was listening on my iPad to the broadcast, and Tony said that's not a strength or something like that. Tony and Jim have a good time, don't they? I mean, that's a nice chemistry.
Jim Nance took the opportunity to introduce Tony as Dallas's favorite son. I guess Dallas has never had another good athlete before Tony got here.
That's an interesting thing.
I thought some guys won championships here in multiple sports, but I guess not.
Let's not go too far, Ed. We're on the
Did Madonna win a championship? Did Dirk win a championship? Did Romo? Did Elliott?
We're on the cusp of having Tony on, so let's not screw this up again. All right, before we get to Jerry, though, I want to take this opportunity to talk about my bookie. Ed, you're someone that's so. You're just a tense man when it comes to covering the NFL. You're not a man who's going to lay down a lot of bets. I get that about you. That's okay. Some people do like to put a little something down. My bookie has been incredible. They've been in business for years, have great reviews online, and their mobile site, easy to use. That's why I'm urging you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, they pay. They have that live betting in-game, most rewarding player perks in the business for you. And then, Ed, join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit dollar for dollar.
This sounds like my 401k.
How's that doing these days?
It's a lot better than the last 2 days.
The market took a little hit. Use the promo code Doomsday, DOOMSDAY, to activate the offer. Visit MyBookie online today. That's MyBookie, MyBookie. I like to spell things. And don't forget to use the promo code Doomsday.
Perfectly legal, I assume.
Very much. Yeah, Ed, have you heard of these offshore things? When creating your account to claim up to $1,000 in free play, you play, you win, you get paid. And Ed, that's the truth. I mean, seriously, these guys are like, I think they're in Costa Rica. I'm serious. When you ask people, like, where do I go? What site should I go to? I'm serious. If you show up at any like sports, in Vegas, sports venues, but the sports books, and you say, who should I go check out? And I swear, everybody will say MyBookie. Love having them on Doomsday. Ed, this is where it's time to listen in, and you'll hear me chiming in. Here's what I did. I eliminated the first 4 or 5 minutes with Jerry because he did it quick, and he said, okay, guys, have a great night. He said, these guys played well. Go talk to them. And then, I did the thing.
Jerry deferring credit to the players.
Yeah, he said, go talk to the players. This was 4 minutes in. I was like, oh, goodness.
I hate doing whatever Jerry tells me to do.
I followed Jerry after that, and we had some just a
little
about
private
3 or
conversation.
4 of us. 3 or 4 of us.
Well, there's some people in the media you just can't make go away.
No. I would say Clarence E. Hill.
I was not going to name any names, and I'm not going to agree or disagree with whoever you say, but that's one.
Yeah, and he's certainly a guy that will never go away. Todd Archer. I mean, these people are always around. But, Ed, mostly it was me asking questions. Here is Jerry, and you will hear a man mesmerized by this front four on defense.
We were basically productively moving the ball offensively and making the stops on the defense. No, against that quality of team, I can't remember when we played that well on both sides of the ball.
The fact that Dak ran so much, 80-something yards rushing, season high in terms of rushing attempts. You talked about that, right? That you thought he needed to run.
Yes, I do. We've got templates for that. We had it last week there in Houston, and then we had it at Carolina. They were able to have the quarterback make rushing yardage, and it compromised our defense, and we got a good defense. The things that were most impressive was Dak's overall play. And then secondly, what we were able to do with that front four. The front four, the rotation the makeup of our pass front four, our rush front four. I had dreamed of seeing that combination for a long time. There's more than you could ever imagine has gone into having that front four. Lawrence, certainly Collins over there, and then having Irvin and having Gregory on the outside. Now, I really need something of the year for that. No, but seriously, we had thought it was kind of a triumph when the ball ran out there at the same time, and it really was. When 95 made those first 2 or 3 rushes out there, he's made a big difference.
Jerry, do you have a feel for, having him been around the team and getting to practice this week, that you're going to get to see more of him, that he's in a good groove and he's in a good place?
You're talking 95?
Talking about Irving, correct?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. He's really came back in excellent shape for not having played. And he had the practices that he had were inordinately productive to not have played. And then again, he's another year into it. You've got to use the word. You've got another year of maturity, and so he's going to be a real asset for us. And I know that anybody that stays away from the game, I've never talked to a player yet that didn't really, a thinking player that didn't appreciate even more what it meant to him to get to play. I think he's got that, and I think, not that he needs it, but Gregory, and again, to have those two out there on the field with 90 at the same time, and then Collins, who we think a lot of in there is really, as far as a nose man in that particular lineup, is an unbelievable rush group.
And there he is, Jerry Jones. Moments after that game, a very excited Jerry Jones also. And I got to keep bringing this up. There was a lot of excitement from the players and Jerry about Conor McGregor. And now some thought, could he get Conor McGregor in an event right there at the AT&T Stadium? And I tried to get, I don't know if you've seen this yet, I did post the video. I asked Jerry, after we were kind of done with what you just heard, I said, Jerry, would you be able to pull off the strut that Conor McGregor does? And Jerry declined.
I bet he did it after the cameras were off. I bet he strutted like Conor McGregor all the way to his helicopter.
Where would the helicopter? Do you think he parks if the helicopter takes him back to Frisco? Or do you think do you think he has a helipad at home?
No, I think there's. I know there's airports that there's private air landing places at near Highland Park.
No, he could go right into Highland Park.
He has a big compound. I've never been invited inside the gates, but it looks large and lavish.
I've peeked over the.
I've looked over it. Yeah. I just haven't been invited in. I was during one of the coaching searches. I found a perch, a street above his compound that I could see over the walls.
Oh, really?
And so I saw Terry Donahue at Jerry's house when he was interviewing Donahue for the job. And the funniest thing was, I think it was Sherm Lewis from Green Bay, the Green Bay offensive coordinator, came and interviewed for the job, and he had an enormous amount of luggage. Like he was staying. Like he was sure. Moving. He showed up in a U-Haul at Jerry's house. Oh my gosh. And then they did. Then he said, "Oh, I just came for a brief. Have lunch with Jerry." And I said, "We were carrying an awful lot of bags for a lunch, weren't you?"
Oh my gosh. Okay, now let's.
One thing.
What Jerry said.
Yeah, what Jerry was saying there, and he kind of laughed it off. What he talked about as far as all he had gone through to get these 4 defensive linemen on the field together, and what he's referencing there obviously is all the various suspensions and the waiting for David Irving after his suspension expired to have his life in order so he could come back and play football, and DeMarcus Lawrence is now his torn labrum, so he won't be able to throw out the first pitch at the Ranger game next year if the Cowboys win the Super Bowl. And but that's kind of what he was talking about, I think, is just all these things that are out of his control that had conspired to keep them from having their best 4 rush guys on the field at the same time. And, I think if you can get a lead, this is what Bill Polian, I know you're not a Bill Polian fan, but I am, and I remember this, and so when it comes up in a game, I'm going to bring this up again. But Polian always said the thing you have to protect the lead in the NFL is you have to be able to pressure the quarterback and run the football. So if the Cowboys can get a lead, they should be able to protect it. Whether they can get one, I don't know. But if they can get one, they should be able to protect it.
And boy, Napoleon is a gas bag. But I will say that the defense was excellent. The back end of it held up well. You got two violent linebackers, especially Jalen Smith. You got a guy who runs sideline to sideline, and they finally can function without Sean Lee. In fact, they're functioning pretty well without him. And then to see, and again, the problem with that is you really never know week to week if a David Irving's always going to be out there. You really don't know if Gregory is. But when they are, it's a very talented
Gregory
group.
had a sack in the game. Jalen Smith knocked the ball loose on one of the 2 turnovers that they had. Yeah, no, you're right. It's got to be a frustrating way to live, but Jerry's played this game the whole time he's been in Dallas with these players who have off-the-field issue. He's mesmerized by the talent more than he is concerned about their availability.
Yeah, it's a very good rotation, and some of the people that thought or wrote about, could Dallas try to use Jacksonville as the blueprint, and could they put together a dominant type defense? They got the makings of it. I don't want to call them dominant yet, but certainly have some nice pieces. I still don't totally trust the back end of that thing, but up the front four, when all those guys are rotating through there, and then you throw Malik Collins, and he comes crashing through there, and he's kind of playing the nose. Wasn't that interesting that Jerry indicated that I think there's some excitement over Collins. Nothing against Tyrone Crawford, but I almost sense that the 4 he's talking about don't include Charlton or Tyrone Crawford. He's talking about all these other guys.
One's a first-round pick, and one's paid like a first-round pick.
Correct.
And the other thing I think that gets overlooked when you talk about that defensive line is a rookie. What is he, 6th-round pick, Dorrance Armstrong?
Yeah, who started
in the game and really played 2 snaps to Tank's 1. Tank was only being used in pass rush situations, and he played well enough, Armstrong did, that nobody really recognized that it wasn't one of the most dominant defensive players in the league out there.
Yeah, that is a fascinating thing. Ed, there was I was in there working the locker room, trying to bring us a little audio, and one of the things that we talked about came up with Cole Beasley, and I thought Cole, who had over 100 yards receiving. Did he end up with 101? I mean, that's like
2 touchdowns.
That's like
too.
Usually 2 or 3 weeks worth for some of these wide receivers to end up with that. Had 2 touchdowns, and he basically said I think I asked him the question. Well, you hear the question, but he responds basically talking about the impact he had in this game. Here is Cole Beasley following the Cowboys' 40-7 victory over Jacksonville.
Were you surprised at one point? Tony said on the broadcast, he says, it's like they didn't plan for him. He was like, couldn't believe you found yourself that open. Was it surprising at all at times when you were out there?
Well, they probably think they didn't have to just because the volume hasn't been as much as it was this game. Probably had like 3 targets last game. So, really, what is there to plan for, So, they probably knew I was a guy that could get open, but, they would only have to defend me 3 to 5 times, so I wasn't really surprised. They changed it in the second half, for sure, so they made adjustments, but it was too late.
Boy, there he is, Cole Beasley, with some interesting comments. Cowboys locker room after that 47 victory. Ed, before we get to That's a Stretch, boy, a very popular segment, let's talk about Hodges Capital, our partners. They've just done an unbelievable job with us. And Stretch,
if you can't make enough money gambling, here's another option.
That's right. If you, and I think you can do hand in hand. If you make a ton of money gambling over there at MyBookie, I would go ahead and put it with Hodges Capital. And it's a remarkable thing they've done over the years. And they've been doing it for, my gosh, going on about 30 years now. And Clark and Craig Hodges do a remarkable job. They're in downtown Dallas. Started out with some equity funds, and Ed, it's private wealth. It's retirement for folks, and quite honestly, one of the great things they do, Ed, is when the market tanks like it did the other day. I know Trump usually has the market doing what it's supposed to do, but the other day he lost control for a couple of hours, and it went south on him. The Hodges take care of business, and they will keep you right there where you need to be. It is Hodges Capital, and they do an incredible job, and people that have been listening to Doomsday have called them. I've had people call me up, and they go, hey, I've got about $50,000 here. I got $10,000. I got some stuff I want to start trying to put some stuff into my retirement. What could they do for me? Ed, I send them over there, and that's why, Ed, with that massive retirement you have from ESPN, I'm going to recommend that you get over to Hodges Capital and do it.
It's a little less massive
immediately.
Than it was on
no, you're doing
Wednesday.
Fine. You're doing. I know. Hey, Trump will get this thing turned around. All right, it is time for our. Boy, I tell you, it's been a popular segment for us.
It's not my favorite segment, though. My favorite segment is us talking.
No. This one has really grabbed everyone's attention.
Resonated.
It has resonated with folks. It's called That's a Stretch. And Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys scout and coach, joins us live from the studios at Channel 8, where he's about to do some live TV. We're just a couple hours removed from the Cowboys' 40-7. Wow. 40-7 victory over Jacksonville, a team that appeared in the AFC title game last year.
Have we had that score fact-checked yet?
It is remarkable. It just seems very weird. Stretch, just before we start kind of going down Stretch's grades, it's become a very popular segment. Just overall, how shocked were you that the Cowboys were able to pull off what they did today?
Well, I mean, that's probably why I'm working over here at Channel 8 instead of doing what I need to be doing, is because I didn't have any idea this would happen. I really thought this would be a low-scoring, hard-fought football game, and I certainly don't have any answers for that. I can say this with, it may be the most complete game I've seen the Cowboys play in a long time, and I say complete from, special teams, defensively, game plan-wise. I think they only had 3 penalties in the game. They were very focused on what they wanted to do or what they wanted to get accomplished. And it was impressive to watch, and obviously I'm sure the coaching staff at the Cowboys is, that they went from getting fired last week to calling their agents and working on an extension tonight.
Stretch, let's start with a group from the offense that you were very, very hard on. In fact, I think you handed them an F last week. Let's start with the wide receivers. What is your overall take on that, and then of course your grade?
Yeah, I thought that Scott Lanahan put them in position. They ran some bunch sets. They ran some motions. He did some things with that really I thought played into their hand. And I'm saying played into their hand because this is a smaller group of receivers. They don't have a big catch radius. They're kind of underneath guys that are quicker guys that can do some things versus man coverage in short areas. And I thought they really went at that. And so, I'm kind of giving this grade as a dual grade to both Scott Lanahan and to the receiving corps, because I did think that they did some very nice things. I wish Gallup would have got his feet down on that fade route that they threw. I believe it was either the second or the third series. But I thought it was really well-devised game plan. I thought they went out and executed very well. And let me say this. They brought the receivers in to block an 8-in-the-box look several times. And because of that, I really thought they were productive in more ways than just catch numbers. Because I really look at that. I look at, what are these guys doing when you got a great running back? Are they helping him? Are they blocking for him? Are they getting a hat on the perimeter? And then to see him, to see Lanahan bring them in motion and bring those guys in there to get up on the safety and get up on the most dangerous guy. They did a nice job. And because of that, I'm giving this group a strong B. And Lanahan, go have yourself a fresca tonight, because you know what, you deserve it. It was a well-devised game plan, and it was well executed by this group of receivers.
I think Scott would like to have his own grade for this game, if you don't mind, Stretch. I'm sure he's.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll fire up a Marlboro here and see if I can send him up a smoke signal or two, if that's what that'd make him feel better.
Well, other than Scott Linehan, it seemed like the person in the organization most doubted, other than Jason Garrett, would have been the quarterback, Dak Prescott. What did you think? Everybody complains he's under 200 yards passing. Well, he was again tonight, but he also had a Roger Staubach like 82 yards running the football, 2 touchdown passes, a rushing touchdown. What did you think of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he made the correct reads. I thought he executed the game plan well. Now, keep in mind, he had an oblong object bounce directly off the ground back into his hands twice. Now, I mean, you can call that whatever you want. I'm going to say that that's, you know, a little bit of that is some good luck or whatever.
My understanding is they practice that during the week.
Yeah, that
yeah, and I'm sure they do. And you know what? Hey, the bottom line was he got a game plan. He went out and executed the game plan. Yes, he didn't have great throwing numbers, but I could also say that he was very close to hitting that deep post to Austin. If Gallup can get his feet in on that first fade route, I mean, he's really close to, up in the 260s. So I think he's really close to having that big yardage breakout game, even though he was able to really do some things for his team with his feet. I like that the rush didn't seem to bother him. I mean, he keeps his eyes down the field. I like that he made some plays off of that, keeping things alive with his feet. So I'm gonna give Dak a B+ as well.
Okay, well, no, you gave the receivers a B. You gave Dak a B+. Now, you hinted to us earlier tonight, though, that 11 carries. Now, he was asked about this after the game. Hey, is 11 okay? And he said, that's fine. I'm great with that.
You're talking about Dak.
Talking about Dak Prescott. Do you think that's a little much for him to carry the ball?
I mean, I do in the NFL. I think when you start relying on your quarterback and you start thinking he's gonna get those tough yards, he's gonna be able to put his head down and get those first downs. It's not something that I would want to start to say weekly, we need to make a living doing this. Now, obviously, Jacksonville showed them the look that it was very effective, and I think you'll see some teams that will game plan that, probably starting with Minuski and the defense coordinator Washington. I'm sure he's already thinking about, hey, you know what, we cannot let this happen. So I think there's weeks that zone read look is there and he can pull the football. I thought, the tight ends did a nice job of blocking for him on that. And so the look was there. Is that something I want to hang my hat on and say, on a week in, week out, 16-game basis, do I want my starting quarterback and possibly a guy that I'm going to be paying big money to be carrying the football more than really 3 or 4 times a game? I'm going to say the answer is no, because eventually if he keeps getting 11 carries a game, you're going to see Cooper rush, and I think that would be really disastrous for this organization and quite honestly for Jason Garrett.
I thought Cooper did a nice job in there tonight.
Cooper really finished
those 11 rushes.
He finished that game strong tonight. Stretch, did you fold this? Just for clarification, Alan Hearn loves a good clarification. Alan Hearn's. Did you fold the tight ends into the receiver grade?
No, I didn't. I thought the tight ends really did an exceptional job, and I'm going to say because what they did blocking wise really gave them an edge. And I'm talking about you saw Jarwin, you saw Swain, we saw your boy Gathers make a good catch, and that's 2 weeks in a row. They're starting to work him into this offense. So I'm gonna give the tight ends a B+ just on effort and just a notch above the grade that I gave the receivers.
Gathers in his 3rd season now being fast-tracked into the offense.
I like it. Boy, Gathers he's really been a big part of this thing. Now, before we get to Zeke, because Zeke had a nice night tonight, let's look at this offensive line. And what did you, just at first glance, what did you have on this offensive line?
Well, I'm seeing a group that is, initially we were down on. I thought they played a really good football game. I think Connor Williams gets better every single week. I think Collins gets better every single week. And so, a lot of times I don't just look at the grade that I'm giving these guys. I try to put an arrow with the grade, and you don't want any kind of, flat arrows. You don't want any arrows going down. And when you look across at this group, I mean, the arrow is pointing up. And so I like that. I like the job that they did. They really did a nice job of pass protecting. They didn't let They didn't let really what is Saxonville. I mean, they've got all kinds of nicknames over there for what they're doing, and they really did a great job of protecting Dak. So I'm giving that group an A, and it's probably the first time I've given the offensive line an A in a long time.
Wow, an A for the offensive line. And then on Zeke's effort this evening, started out like some of these past games with not gaining a whole lot, but then as the game went on, seemed to kind of break it open, and then was able to really put up a nice number as he built on that and helped the Cowboys pretty much salt this thing away quickly in the second half.
Yeah, and he ran a couple of really nice routes. Now that the read, Dax Reed didn't get him there, but he ran a couple nice routes. The thing that I'm most impressed with Zeke about is his pass protection. I'm going to tell you, there's a play. It was I think it was about 50 seconds left in the second quarter when Dallas was in the red zone, and I'm telling you, he tore Calais Campbell's. He tore his rib cage off. It's one of the most violent hits.
He's 6'8", 300 pounds.
Yeah, and it's one of the most violent hits I've seen in a long time. I'm talking about great football position. He's got his shoulders over his toes, and he unloads on Calais Campbell. Calais Campbell took a knee and had to come out of the football game. I mean, Zeke he does so many things other than just run the football that really don't show up in just the statistics and the things that you see. So, I mean, Zeke, even though he just got over the 100-yard mark, I'm giving him an A for all the things he does besides run with the football.
Two A's from Stretch so far, and so Stretch really pleased with the offense's performance. Stretch, let's run over to the defensive side of the ball. I will tell you that Jerry, after the game, was almost the place he went to talking about the defensive line and that rush, and you know what he was talking about. He finally got to see Irving out there with Gregory and Lawrence, and then he threw Malik Collins in there. I would almost say he was orgasmic about that when he was talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, those guys. I know that's something that he's looked forward to. That kind of that 8-man rotation of guys running in there, and Lawrence, they kind of lightened his load a little bit. But I mean, Irving, it's amazing having missed the time. I mean, he was very active, and then Collins had the big sack. I mean, he did a little James Brown turnaround in there move that you'd be proud at one of your fraternity dances doing. But I like the fact that he's running these, and I'm saying Rod Marinelli is rotating these guys in there, and he's got no problem with any of them playing up and down the line. I'm saying whether it's Crawford, Collins, Irving. Irving can play inside some. They can play multiple positions.
Dorrance Armstrong started.
And I think that's what Jerry gets a kick out of, is those guys up and down the line who, I mean, can get in that stance and flat get off the football. It also helps that they you hear the term on offense, stay ahead of the chains. It helps them defensively when they can get in that 3rd and 6 plus where they can pin their ears back and really come after that guy. So I think that when you initially take a look at the defensive line, I mean, it was a very solid effort. Not a lot of big numbers, but a very solid effort, and that entire group's getting a B plus.
All right, let's look at the linebackers. Jalen Smith continues to deliver some, big hits.
I think he and Leighton Vander Esch led the team in tackles again.
Yeah,
in the absence of Sean Lee.
Some violent hits that you saw out there. What did that linebacking core do for you?
It was awesome. I was very critical of Vander Esch and the pick, and I mean after that was about the 6th or 7th player at the time that was on the roster from Boise. I thought maybe they were going to think about moving training camp to Boise, so I was very critical of that pick. But I'm going to say this: I mean, that young man has gotten better every single week. Again, we're going to go back to the arrows, and the arrows are way up with this group. After catching the touchdown, Jacksonville ran it out of a trip set, and they ran a deep over. And Vander Esch was just a tad late getting there, and Brown was also late getting there. Well, the Cowboys go 3 and out. The very next play, Jacksonville flips the formation, They go trips to the right and run the exact same play to the left. Van Der Esch recognizes it, cuts him off. He kind of makes him run over the top a little bit. That pushes him back in the safety. You saw the tip ball and the Heath interception. So from a smart standpoint, I mean, he's a very intelligent. I mean, you know, and having Sean Lee in that room to help coach him doesn't hurt, but I mean, he is a smart player. He's an instinctive football player. Jalen Smith continues to get better every week as far as how he rushes the passer and some things he can do when they get those wide defensive tackles on the guards, and it kind of turns him one-on-one versus that center. They you know, the league's having fits with that, so that's another group that I'm going to give an A to, and love their effort and love the direction that they're going.
So with this Leighton Van Der Esch pick, they've turned what was an obvious weakness on their team last year into a position of real strength. I mean, how they're going to divide up the playing time when Lee comes back is hard to imagine.
Right, I think that's going to get back to the rotational things, and I also think though that when you know, if you're a Cowboy fan, you got to think, you know what, he's had these hamstring issues, and because they've got depth at that position, it's allowing him and those trainers, Britt Brown, Jim Maurer, those guys, to hopefully, you know, get that hamstring where it is 100% and where Sean Lee is ready to come back, doesn't come back too early. And the reason he's not going to come back too early is because they've got depth at that position. So kudos to the Cowboys and what they did as far as kind of, I think stepping out on a limb when they drafted that young man who had, you know, played 8-man football in high school and I believe only started either 1 or 2 years at Boise. He's come on and really done a great job. So, you know what, sometimes Stretch makes some statements he wish he hadn't made, and on draft night when they announced his name and I said, God bless you, I probably wish I hadn't said that now.
So Stretch taking some things back right now. His initial thoughts.
His
on
arrow's still
Van Der Esch.
pointing up, though, don't you think?
Yeah.
Stretch's arrow's still pointing up.
Yeah. No, Stretch for sure. I think Stretch is really going places. Now, Stretch, secondary. We look at had the whole gang out there and
2 turnovers again.
Yeah, 2 turnovers and boy, good. You got the interception. What did you make of the secondary? They got that lead and they seem to clamp down on them.
Yeah, I did a great job. Now, you know, Jacksonville had a beat up receiver core, but that has nothing to do when you're looking at the game. I thought Jordan Lewis had an outstanding game. Jeff Heath played well. This group is starting to gel as a group, and they're starting to be able to also gain some flexibility and some positions they can play. They brought Jordan Lewis down and let him be the nickel. He blitzed a few times, and you know, he's even though he's a little undersized, I mean, he's not afraid to get in there and get in the mix. And I got to give that group a solid B for the things that they were able to do. They did miss a few tackles on the perimeter. You know, that's kind of ticky-tack stuff, but that keeps them from getting an A. But right now, defensively, I mean, this group is playing very well, and I'm sure that you know, both Rod Marinelli and Keith Richard are very proud of the defense and how they're playing. And you know, you can say, well, without Leonard Fournette, without, you know, that really some of their frontline guys, that has nothing to do with how you play. And when you go to look at the film, you got to grade them for what you see on the film, not necessarily who they're playing against. And they're flying around and making some plays and playing with confidence. And that's, you know, as a Cowboy fan, I mean, that's what you want to see defensively. You know, they're really getting it done right now.
Coach Marone goes limping home. Ed,
I was going to say, do we have him grade the special teams?
Oh, we don't usually, but was there anything you saw?
Garrett only got to punt a few times. Maher has made 14 field goals in a row.
That guy is nails. I'm so glad they got.
Who's the kicker before?
I have no clue.
I can't remember.
So glad they got rid of him.
I thought the biggest play of the game literally was when J.P. Lattisewer caught him with 12 out there and went ahead and snapped that ball. I mean, that allowed them to keep that drive alive. So, I mean, the special teams is doing a good job. You know, I think that when you Maher, I mean, he is really, he stepped it up and like, you know, you guys are, I know you're joking around, but I mean, he has made us not even think about Dan Bailey. And that's, you know, a lot of times that's hard to do. You don't want to be the guy that replaces the man, but he has accepted that role. And stepped up in there, and I got to give that group a B plus, A, whatever you want to grade it on the curve a little bit. I wish I'd see a little more out of the return game, but they are certainly getting it done from a special team standpoint and sound schematically in what they do.
And I think when you're paying your long snapper $1 million a year, you ought to get that kind of awareness out of LP
Stretch, why are you calling him JP? It's LP Lattisewer.
JP, LP, what the hell? It doesn't matter. The damn long snapper.
Canadian
like Ed's saying, if you're paying the stinking guy $1 million, he ought to snap it. Now that I know that, I'll give him a damn C. You're right, he should have done
it. Once you factor his salary into the equation, the grade goes down.
He starts off with a C every week.
Makes your old give a shitter go down, shiv a getter, whatever. Makes you go down a little bit. It's not the same.
All right, stop working blue. Do we have a? Do you have a completely different feeling about this team right now, or can we not have? Do we not want to overreact? They're 3-3. They're going to Washington. Are they right in the middle of this NFC East race, or are you just not
as the records would suggest?
Correct.
I think this is realistically, guys, I think this is an 8-8, 9-7 football team. It hasn't changed. One game has not changed my, I'm not ready to give everybody a contract extension and start drinking the blue Kool-Aid. It was a great game, and they went out and did what they were supposed to do. But I'm not. They're going in. They'll be. I think if they beat Washington, they'll be in first place in the NFC East. Is that really? Am I really going to jump up and say, "Hey, I'm ready to say this is an 11-5 football team"? I'm absolutely not. When I look at the schedule, I see a lot of tough games ahead of this football team. I can also say that at the beginning of the year, when I saw this schedule, I marked the Jacksonville game as a loss. So, that's how it works right now, I think, in the NFL. You're going to win some that initially you probably didn't think you were going to win at the beginning of the year, and I think you also may lose one or two that you thought you were going to win. But I don't see I don't see enough right now to make me think that this team is anything more than an 8-8, 9-7 football team.
It is our segment. That's a stretch.
The only man in football who gives an alphabetical grade and a directional signal to go with it.
What was it?
He gives an arrow. He gives a grade and an arrow.
Oh man, everybody's arrow was pointed up tonight. This is a lot of good feelings around this thing. And
it's all pointed up. Last week we were all barking hook 'em unicorns with the middle finger, and right now we're saying, "Hey boys, it looks good. Let's go get them."
Hey, congrats to your alma mater. For people that don't know, Stretch played football at the University of Texas. They beat my alma mater, Baylor, the other day, 23-17. It wasn't easy to take down the Bears, but they did it
with their backup quarterback.
Stretch, have a tremendous week. You can always watch Stretch on Channel 8, 10:30 on Sunday nights at Sunday Night Special with Dale Hansen. Dale Hansen's Sports Special.
Dale Hansen's a guy who talks a lot.
Oh, he certainly does, and gets paid a lot as well.
Friend.
Yeah, has kind of abandoned that 6 o'clock. He just kind of rolls in there, does 10, he heads on home. But and then also but
during the Cowboys season, he at least shows up for the Dale Hansen Sports Special.
Yeah, the rest of the year
he's not a part of the Dale Hansen Sports Special.
No.
Okay.
No, it's Joe Trahan and those guys. Someday Dale will turn it over to him, I'm sure, but it'll be several years down the road. And then you can hear
Mike Leslie does a nice job.
Mike Leslie stretches on that call-in show they do with Rebecca Lopez.
That's some good TV.
Yeah, and they do that at 11 or 11:30 on
Mondays.
On Mondays after games. So, and then Stretch does some breakdowns on WFAA.com. Stretch, thank you, buddy.
Thanks, bud.
We appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Have a good one, guys.
Okay.
Had a day.
There he goes. Glenn Stretch Smith. You can hear the hang-up right there on the...
I think he may have gone into his rock memorabilia because he said Keith Richards instead of Chris Richard.
Is that what he called him?
I think that was LP, JP, whatever.
Yeah. Keith Richard is his name. We thank Stretch, and that's a stretch. always fun to have Glenn Stretch Smith on. And Ed, as we get ready to close, just a lot of stuff, a lot of feel-good stories in this one. So much to get into. And boy, thanks everybody who's been a part of Doomsday and the whole Doomsday family, including the auto lease lady. And I tell you what, I'm so happy that Marie has joined forces with us. You can find her website. It's autoleaselady.com, or you can find it on Facebook. She's the Auto Lease Lady. Marie does an incredible job for many, many years. She's been in the car business, and when it comes to leasing, she makes it incredibly easy. And we are in a Honda Pilot, 2018 Honda Pilot. She put my wife in that, and we have been extremely pleased by that. That 3 rows in that thing. I've got an 11-year-old daughter, heavily involved in dance, and so we get all her friends. We load them up, and we carpool them to the dance studios. It's a big time thing. Autoleaselady.com, or you can go to the Facebook Auto Lease Lady. Marie is incredible, has been doing it for a lot of years, and she just makes it extremely easy. Give her a call today, or just look her up on Facebook or the website, and you can go that route. Do what I did and call the Auto Lease Lady. Ed, you have come across a really interesting number that sort of shows what the Cowboys, I believe this is sort of a somewhat positive thing about,
I don't know how to look at this, really,
about Jason Garrett, and a number that sort of typifies what he's been able to do.
What's he had 3 8-8 seasons as a head coach?
Yes,
okay.
And he avoided it.
He loves mediocrity.
He beat. That was
I don't know if he aspires to mediocrity, but he achieves it a lot.
Should have had a 4th one. He beat Philadelphia, meaningless,
right,
but he called it a big win.
Right.
They beat Philadelphia in that one.
It cost him Derwin James.
What'd you stumble across?
I stumbled across on social media, and I'm gonna give credit to David Hellman for this, even though he probably stole it from somebody else.
Not familiar with the name,
but I'm going to give proper credit. That's all I can do. In his time as head coach, Jason Garrett's teams have played 14 games while being 1 game under 500, which they were going into this game. In those games, the Cowboys are now 12-2, with the most recent wins coming against the Giants, Lions, and Jaguars at home this year.
When they are 1 game below 500.
They almost always win.
This is in the Garrett.
Tell your bookie friends that we have a business relationship with now. The guys in Costa Rica.
Let's call them My Bookie.
My Bookie. I said My Bookie Friends. That's an even better name.
We should take a vacation down there.
They should change it to My Bookie Friends. What's wrong with that? That's better than My Bookie.
Okay. Let's just kind of stick with My Bookie for now. I think they've done really well with that. Ed, I always appreciate that when you bring that kind of stuff. Okay, Ed, are you going to be in town for next week's event? Where are you going to? Because the Cowboys have a big game on the road at Washington. Will you be in the Metroplex, or will you be from our Colorado studio?
I currently plan to be right here in the studio with you after the game.
Yes.
Mainly because I find it so much easier to interrupt you here.
Yes, and then you and I will both be at the game when they play Tennessee.
The Monday night Titans
for Westwood
game.
1.
Correct.
And we'll have to figure out how to get in the studio after that, because you will be, I cannot imagine how tired you'll be after working the sideline.
Oh, my back hurts, my feet hurt. Yeah, it's a bad scene.
You can wear those like dress sneakers you love to wear. It is Matt Mosley. It is the Doomsday Podcast for Ed Werder and Mark Frito Friedman from Frito Nation Productions in far north Dallas. Good night, everybody.
Shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before. And the streets are all but empty, the bars have all shut down, and it's hard to find a friend inside this godforsaken town. That emptiness, it feels from your head down to your toes. I'm sorry, baby, that's just the way it goes. Once you were a young girl with lovers by the score, money by when the cold wind blows. I'm sorry, baby, that's just the way it goes.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.